Hello everyone, my name is Vasily Sachnev. I am a professor from the Department of Information Communication and Electronics Engineering, and today I will introduce a new course that's called Application Programming. So in that particular course we will start talking about different applications, about the different method how to create that application, and precisely we will focus on iOS programming. So the iOS programming is extremely popular nowadays. So the number of Mac devices powered by iOS is extremely increasing for the last 20 years. And as default, that create the topic related to making application for Apple devices pretty interesting, and this particular course will be focusing on iOS programming using Xcode, and details about the course related to iOS programming will be presented right here. So what will be our talk for today? So we will talk about the class subject, about class structure, about the class details with a few different issues inside, and finally we will talk a little bit about the examination and evaluation for this particular class. So from what we can begin our talk. Okay, so the class subject. So this particular course is about practical implementation of the different applications. So that's why, so mostly we must focus on programming and practice. So based on that approach, so we're supposed to set up the class structure such that the process of study iOS programming must be optimal. So for that, our classes will be divided into the online lectures and offline lectures. So the online lectures is going on right now. So this is just introduction to this particular subject. So the real video lectures will be nothing else as the guideline of making different application for iPhone using Xcode. So this is a few words about the class structure. Again, that class will be partially online, partially offline. Okay, so the class details. As long as this particular class is 100% practical, so here the first what we will need to do is to define the programming tools for our class. Actually, we don't have any option. So if we are talking about iOS programming, so the tool must be Xcode. Yeah, I can write Xcode. So if for other programming languages we do have an options, so for iOS programming, so that is only Xcode designed by Apple. Okay, and here let's write we are going to study iOS programming. iOS programming. So once we are focusing on programming, so that's why another important issue will be the material, what will be available for our class. So such material I will introduce by myself. So you can download all necessary stuff from the eCyber. So also I recommend you a book. So that book again is optional. That is not mandatory that you must buy. No. So completely up to you. If you're feeling that the material what am I giving is good enough for study, you don't really need to buy that particular book. So the later we can come back to the topic related to the textbook for different classes, including iOS programming. So what I can tell you now is that in many scenarios, that particular book is not really helpful. So the more important is the material taken from the internet, taken from the different video lessons existed in internet. And together, this is much more reliable way of study programming languages as iOS programming. So finally, the material what will be given during the course through eCyber will be good enough to complete the course. But if you really need the book, you can always get it. Again, not necessary. As long as we are doing programming, so from time to time, you will need a source code. So that particular source code will be also available during the course. So, and all applications, all tasks, what we will discuss and solve during the course. So you can get the source code from the eCyber for that particular tasks. So that's why if you will not be able to get some some necessary information from the course, you still can analyze the source code, which will be always available in eCyber. Okay, and the last details about the class. So we will study iOS programming through the solving different problem and tasks. So how it will looks like every class. So I will introduce a design, like an application, what we will try to create during this current class, or that may take few classes. So in one by one, so we will discuss how to create that particular application. So that will be our problem and tasks. Okay, and at the end, in details, we will talk about exam and evaluation. Okay, so now let's go to the next slide. Here, class subject. So in this course, so we will focusing on iOS programming. So this is extremely wide tool for different for designing the different application. So mostly that particular programming tool is designed only for the Mac devices, so you cannot use those particular programming tools to design something else. So that is 100% Apple devices. That can be iPhone, iPad, like what it's called, the AirPods. I don't know iTouches exist or not. So, but before was possible to create apps for iTouch as well. So, smart watch, smart TV from Apple. So, everything what is designed by Apple can be programmed using Xcode. So, and if those apps, those different devices support multiple applications, so we can try to code them using the Xcode. Like even AirPods can be coded using Xcode, but only in the developer level. So, but anyway, so the most interesting topic here is the programming for iPhone. So iPhone is the smartphone, and for the smartphone we can create our own application. So the class subject is the application programming, and right here in this class we will focus on making application for iPhone. Okay, so yeah, that was the brief explanation about what is iOS programming and how to deal with it. As long as iOS programming is the specific programming tool, so any programming tool must have a programming languages. So there is no any programming tool without language. We must have language. And for the iOS programming, there are two options. There are two languages, Swift and the Objective-C. So the Objective-C, this is the language designed by Apple for the Apple products. And in the programming society, yeah, that particular language had not really nice story. So that's why the Apple could not force the entire society like to keep using only one particular programming language. So that's why there is the second one that's called the Swift. So Swift is more friendly. This is the open language. So and as default, this language is supported by the all other, but the all platforms designed specifically for iOS programming. So in our course, so we will use Swift for iOS programming. Okay, so this is the language. So the language again is not identical to what you may learn before. So that's why we will have to spend some time on study what is Swift, like how to deal with this, and what will be the specific commands, and so on. From my experience, I can tell you that the Swift is not really like crazy different from the general C. So that's why if you are familiar with the C language, study any other language, including like Objective-C or Swift, will not be a big deal. So it is very similar language, what you can like always deal with, study, and later use for making different applications. Okay, so the next is important. Where is the huge limitation for the iOS programming? So maybe this is the one of the main reasons why such kind of course for the iOS programming was not exist before, in like at least in our department. The reason why, because for iOS programming we need Mac computers. So it's supposed to be either iMac or MacBook. So the PC designed by Apple, only that particular PC can run Xcode, can run necessary software to code iPhone, iPad, and all other Apple devices. So if you do have only Windows PC, there will be no way to install Xcode and finally do the coding. So there is not official way of doing such kind of things, but here we will focus only on general way of making applications. So for that purpose, we will have to use the Mac laboratory. This is the DOS 1.3.0. So all of our practical classes will be held in that particular room. So altogether there are 20 computers, Mac computers there, and we can use it for iOS programming. So that will be the good enough for practice. So and I hope that will be like the available seats will be enough like to fulfill our class requirement. That should not be a big problem. But again, if you don't have Mac computer, you can practice only in the university in the D340. This is a limitation for this class. But anyway, the iOS programming is extremely interesting topic. So, and I think like doing it in the classroom, it is still helpful. Okay, so what kind of problem, what kind of application, so we will create using during the class. So as long as this is our first experience in making application for iPhone, so that's why we will start from the extremely simple application which contains like few limited elements inside with a minimum coding. So, and we will talk a lot about the different issues related with the coding, related with the kind of particular side issues, like including design, so including some specific properties of making different icons, different objects in like for Apple devices. So there are a lot of things what we will have to discuss before like general coding. So actually any kind of programming for the mobile devices, for the like smartphones, always contains that particular part. So where before doing the exact coding, before start programming something, we will have to solve some side issues. So compared to the Android programming, for example, so the iOS programming is much more reliable. So there are much less issues related to the phone compatibilities with some other extra issues related to the connection, like your mobile phone to computer and so on. Okay, so once the simple application will be fixed, we will spend quite a lot of time discussing like very beginning of the iOS programming. So we will move to a little bit more complex stuff where the design will be supported with some middle level coding. So where we will try to implement some specific logic for our application. Like we will try to fix them, finish them, and install those application in our mobile devices. So that's what I call the complex design. So once that will be fixed, so later we can start talking about more interesting part. So here I call it logical games. So we will try to make our own game during the course. So for sure that will take some time, but here we will mostly focus and discuss some coding part rather than discussing the design and other aspects of making the applications. And at the end, we will try very simple graphics application. So smartphone programming without graphics, I think this is not really interesting. So all application what we do have right now contains graphics parts, and definitely we at least need to try to study how to process simplest computer graphics on our application. So that will be at the end of our course. Okay, so the next one is the software. So as I mentioned, before software for the iOS programming is special. So that software designed by Apple and designed only for Apple devices. So if you had experience programming using Visual Studio, so you may know that Visual Studio is the universal tool which can support everything except Apple programming for the Apple devices. For the Apple devices, we do have a separate tool that's called Xcode. Xcode, this is the free programming tool for iOS programming from Apple company. So that particular software Again, design is pretty similar to the original one, but that particular Xcode powered by Swift and Objective-C, there are two available programming languages for Xcode, and based one on another, we can do the coding. As I mentioned again, in order to use Xcode, we need the Mac PC, Mac computer. So that can be either iMac or MacBook. So Mac Mini also possible. So Mac computers we must use for the X coding. So as usual, such kind of programming has the massive support from company, from Apple. So that's why here, see where is the website, developersapple.com, so which give us tons of materials how to deal with the Xcode for iOS programming. So and in our class we will very often link to that official website to design and create different application. From my experience, I can tell you that sometimes that developer website, even if they pretend to say this is designed for the beginners, that may have a lot of difficulties for real beginners to start coding using that material. So that's why I will always support those particular data what they are giving with my video lectures, with my source code. So, and the classes what I will organize will only base on that material, but that will be something else. Okay, so, and as long as iOS programming is extremely popular, like tons of the developers is doing that. So there are a lot of materials in internet, like including the YouTube's. There are many channels, many of them actually not free, but nowadays it is not a big deal. If you really want, you can always study even iOS programming. Still possible. There is no any specific limitation for that. Maybe except having the Mac computer. Okay, so the next one is our Mac laboratory. So this is the few photos from that particular room. So as you can see here, there are few computers. The room is not really big, so altogether there are 20 PC in the room. So, but this room is good enough in order to do the necessary programming for iOS, for like devices powered by iOS. So all computer already have Xcode, and right here you can see that particular the screen of the mobile phone. Actually, the Xcode is giving you the full access to the iOS programming, including the emulator. So that's why like you can do everything by using only the computer. So that we will again discuss later. Anyway, so the room is exist. So in that particular room, we will practicing with the iOS program. Okay, and the next what I want to show you is some test applications. So at least like you're supposed to see what is the Xcode and emulator and the first application. Actually, everything is displayed right here. What you can see right now, actually, this is the screen of MacBook Air, so which is just connected to my computer, to my PC. So that's why you can see only the screen of that MacBook. So right here, this one is the so this is the Xcode. You can see it here. So, and if you do have experience working with the other tools, so you may see the interface of the Xcode is almost identical to what you can see in Android Studio if you had experience programming for Android phones. With Eclipse to program using Java, Visual Studio has almost identical interface. So all of those tools, they looks pretty much similar to each other. So there is only one difference. This software is designed only for iOS programming. So, and right here we can code different applications. So here there is the one simple app what was created using Xcode for okay, so what is this? iPhone 11 Pro Max. Xcode is giving us the way to create emulator of the mobile phone in our Mac computer. So, for example, if you do have a Mac device but you don't have iPhone, this is the solution. So you can use your Mac to create application for iPhone even if you don't have iPhone. So at least that will be possible to check whenever this application works or not and practice with the iOS programming. At the same time, for example, what if you do have iPhone but you don't have Mac computer? So in that case, you can use your iPhone in D340 in the Mac laboratory. So and create application using that particular computer and install it on your iPhone. So the way how to do that we will discuss later during the course. So there are some issues to discuss in that particular sense. Okay, and inside there is the very simple application. Again, I just try somebody else application. So here is just an example that like in your iPhone screen you can place different text, add different functionality. So for example here there is like login interface to log in through the Facebook, through Google, through email. So such kind of functionality is possible to add using Xcode. And that is not such a big problem for the programming. So anyway, this is just an example. How does the Xcode looks like? How does the emulator looks like? Once again, what is the emulator? If you don't have a device in your hand, no problem. So the computer can design, so they can emulate the mobile phone work on the computer memory. So, and this one is not exactly same, but works as the iPhone. This is the virtual iPhone. And in that virtual iPhone, we can install our own software. Instead, you can use your own device. Remember, the biggest difference in between general programming and programming for the mobile devices is that the computer what we have here will be used only to create the source code. But once we compile that particular code, computer cannot execute that particular code because that code is designed for separate devices. Remember, the mobile phone, this is also looks very similar to computer, but it has very different memory, very different CPU, and the more important, different operation system. So that's why making the code for such kind of devices will be always a challenge, because our computer must have a connection with the device for what we actually designed that particular source code. So the partial solution is the emulator, where without having the exact device, we can launch our applications. So here I may some application and launch it in that particular emulator. By myself, I don't have iPhone, but emulator is good enough for study, for understanding what is going on. As long as Xcode is the universal tool to code almost all Apple devices. If you don't have iPhone, but you do have iPad, you can code your iPad. It is powered by the similar iOS operation system for the mobile devices from Apple. And by using the same tool, you can code iPad exactly the same as iPhone. So there is just some separate differences. Another interesting opportunity, so you can always change this path. So this emulator is emulate iPhone 11. So instead you can use iPhone 12, iPhone 10, and any other iPhone models exist nowadays. No problem. So just programming issues. Download necessary toolbox. And as default, all of those manipulations are free. So we are free to use any kind of mobile devices right here. Okay, so this is what is related to the iOS programming using the Xcode. Okay, so the application I already showed you. So what few words about the class structure. So altogether there are 16 study weeks. As I mentioned, all of our courses will be divided into two parts. One is the online courses. So the online courses will be held by video lectures, what I am doing right now. So will be very similar lectures related to the programming of the different application for iOS programming for Apple devices. Okay, so in the class, so we will practicing on programming the iPhone using Xcode in the classroom D340, which is the Mac laboratory. So during the course, we will have midterm and final. So those particular, like midterm and final, we'll have 4 problems each. And we will come back to those exams later. Assignment. As long as we are practicing with the coding, so definitely I will give you some home assignment where you're supposed to program something by yourself. So and that will be the few assignment during the course. So and we will, as long as again during the class we will practicing with making application for iPhone. So we will have a set of the classwork. So technically application, what we process during the class. Okay. So another part, like class details, so programming tools, Xcode. So the class material. So the most of the material I will present online through the eCyber. It's actually displayed here. Some material will be presented as the presentation, what you can see right now, but the number of them will be not much. As long as we mostly focus on coding. So yeah, the presentation sometimes we will need, but mostly we will not. Okay, in case of the books, so what is the problem with the book? See, that particular market, like smartphone market and smartphone application market, is changing extremely fast. So every year a new operation system is coming. So if we are talking about other areas, let's say general computers, Windows computers. So the Windows 10 has been released when 7 years ago, yeah, even 8 years ago now. So and from that time, so we are like for the last 8 years we are using Windows 10. So in terms of the education, if some professor will make a book, let's say in 2014, uh, based on the general programming, like using, let's say, C#. So nothing will change for until Microsoft will decide to change Windows 10 to something else. In case of the mobile phone programming, you all are using the smartphone. You know that operation system for mobile devices appear very frequently, sometimes few times in a year. For the developers, this is the crazy big headache to redesign application again when the new operation system is coming. So as default, changing the operation system should not affect application much, but in reality, that's happen very often. So in the developers, they're mostly redesigning them application when the new software, like when the new operation system is coming. So I remember the time when the Android update operation system 2-3 times in a year, which is crazy. In case of iPhone, as long as the top topic now is the iOS programming, so the Apple changing iOS every year. So it is either huge update or release of a new operation system. So Apple is doing much better than Google. So that's why if you do have application created using the old version of iOS, with the high chance will work without problem for the new iOS. But again, it's not guaranteed. So why this topic is too much important? So if somebody will write a book about the newest operation system, with the all possible solution given correctly, so the next year when the book will be not even published, so some of them may become wrong. So and from year to year, so the quality of this book can be broken much. So that's why this is the main reason why I'm not recommending the book, because from my understanding this is just wasting of money. So instead of buying book, I will recommend to just Google different solutions in internet. I will always provide the solution by myself. Like I will give you an internet link which may help you in understanding how to code different problems. So and that will definitely help. This is much more helpful than the general book. So for the advanced programming languages, I think book will not be a good option. Again, this is just my own opinion, but the situation around is quite interesting. Okay, so another interesting part is the source code. So the source code, as I mentioned, like we will create quite many different applications, and the source code for that application I will upload in the eCyber. So and if something will not work well, once you finish your own application, so you can always come back to the available source code and check whenever you're doing it correct or not. Okay, and another interesting part will be the problem and tasks. So fortunately, we already covered it. So the entire course will be based on solving different problems. For each problem, we will try to create application and in Xcode. So we will create that application and we will try to solve it. So some application you will have to solve by yourself at home. So that will be your home assignment. And many application we will discuss during the class. So the combination of the homework and the classwork will give you enough knowledge to create your own application at the end of the course. So actually, this is our main target. So to make your programming skill be good enough to make your own application by yourself without any help. So this is my main target, to educate you until that particular level. Okay, and we do have the last slide here. How I will evaluate the class activities. Okay, so a few words about the exams. So the exam, each exam, midterm and final will contain 4 problems. So each problem, this is the application. So each problem prompt you to make one application and solve that particular problem. So during the exam, you can use whenever you want. So the exam is open book, open source. So as long as we will not use book much, so that's kind of not really interesting. So the more important is the open source. So everything what you create by yourself until exam, you can use an exam. So you will not have much time. So that's why, as long as the time is limited, so better to know how to do the coding rather than searching for the solution. So again, this is the strategy. So 4 problems per exam. So there are 2 exams. So for each exam, you're supposed to solve 4 problems, and that will be your evaluation for the exam. Okay, and the general evaluation is pretty normal, nothing special. 30% home assignment, 30% midterm, 30% final term, and 10% attendance. In case of attendance, as long as half of our lectures will be given online, so will be the issue how to check attendance for the online lectures. So the way will be given a little bit later. So usually the idea is to push you guys to finish very simple task and submit result at the end of each lecture. Again, the full details will be given later when the semester started. So I had that particular experience when I teach Android programming class. Okay, and that's all for today's topic. So, we finish. So at the end, I want to tell you that iOS programming is extremely interesting and extremely important topic to study. So in Korea, like iPhone market is wide, so less, for sure, like less important than the Android market, but still huge. Remember that all companies what is making application here in Korea, they must as default create 2 applications. So even if the idea is the same, so the application must be created for Android phones and for iPhone. So companies which is focusing only on Android, they are losing a lot of users. So that's why many companies here in Korea who is focusing on making software, making different applications. So as default, they need programmers for iOS platform. So that's why it is extremely important to know how to make application for iPhone, even if it is hard in many sense, but better to know how to do that. Okay, so this is the final word from me about the iOS programming. Yeah, I'm waiting you in our practical classes. See you soon. Goodbye.